to the Token and Hobbs Show on the Roads to Liberty Network.
Good evening, Liberty lovers. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Token and Hobbs Show, or Roads to Liberty podcast on the Think Liberty Network. I am Token. He is Congressman Hobbs. Welcome to our live show every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central on the Roads, the number 2 Liberty YouTube channel. How you doing, my man?
Oh, you know, whenever lambasted the insanity of the sitcom that we live in right now. It's worse than Seinfeld, which is actually pretty good. It's worse than Friends. It's worse than the Big Bang Theory. Yes.
Oh, God. Don't put us down that path. Nothing is worse than that.
This is real life, and it is awful.
Yeah, welcome to Clown World, everybody. We are on this spinning ball of doom, heading into absolute nothingness, but we have each other to keep ourselves entertained, and that is what we are here to do for the next hour. So, how about we just get right into things? What is on the docket for Clown World Earth this week?
Honk, honk.
What shall we talk? Let's talk about Georgia first. How about that? Does that sound like a good topic to start with?
It does seem to be on the front of everybody's mind as far as politics goes.
So, as we all know, Georgia is ruled by the Ku Klux Klan, and they just passed a law saying that black people are not allowed to vote, and if they try, it is legal to beat them up and throw them off a cliff. That is what Georgia has made legal. I have been assured of this by every mainstream media outlet in the country. So we know it's true. We know that this is going on right now. Georgia just made it illegal to be black. So this is very distressing news. What thoughts do you have on this, Mr. Congressman Hobbs?
It's a pretty bold move for a state where I think the population is close to 50%.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, we know that Atlanta, at least the largest city in Georgia, is 51% African American. Or is that not a proper? Are there 50% person of color? I don't know what you're supposed to say anymore. But yes, it is a very, very bold move for a state that is very, very black to just make blackness illegal. Very distressing stuff going on.
Right.
Over there.
It can't possibly be that the media is lying to us again.
No, that can't be.
Can't be. Certainly not the case. Because they would never. They would never.
No, the media would never mislead us about something that Republicans are doing in order to benefit Democratic candidates. That never happens. Literally never happens. And if you think it happens, you're a wacko conspiracy theorist, and you need to go to a COVID gulag.
Probably a white supremacist.
I mean, definitely a white supremacist. And if you happen to not be white, that just makes you even worse.
Mm-hmm. Race traitors.
For example, I myself have been labeled a Puerto Rican white supremacist because of my libertarian views, which are also fascist views, in case you've never been told that. So, okay, let's clear some things up. So, no, Georgia did not pass a law saying it's illegal to be black. In fact, Georgia decided to pass some election reforms, right? They wanted to clean up their election system. They wanted to require a voter ID. There's a bunch of things that are in this new Georgia law, but I think the most important thing to keep in mind here is that the biggest thing that Democrats are complaining about, not only complaining about it, but saying it's worse than Jim Crow, literally worse. This is
Jim Eagle. It's Jim Eagle.
Yeah, it makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
Whatever that means.
Whoever the fuck Jim Eagle is. Maybe he meant the Eagles. And he said, maybe Joe Biden was just like, oh, it makes Jim Crow look like Jim. Fuck, I don't know any Jims.
Jimi Hendrix.
Eagle. I don't know, Jim Carrey. Look like I'm
It's like shut
I
up
don't
and eat
know
your
that.
shut up and eat your butterscotch pudding, Joe. You've said
I mean,
enough.
Joe Biden is so old and senile, he doesn't even know where he is, much less who Jim Eagle is supposed to be. But yes, this is the voter ID law that is worse than Jim Crow. Now, I want to remind everybody about what happened last week when the Libertarian Party of Kentucky tweeted out comparing COVID passports to the lead up to the Holocaust. And remember all the leftist tears and gnashing of teeth and anguish over that comparison, not even comparing it to the Holocaust, but comparing it to the marking of Jews that led up to it, right? Saying, oh, this is a path we don't want to go down, so let's not do that, right?
Yeah.
That was a big no-no. That was a big oh, how dare you? You're minimizing a tragedy. All of a sudden, Joe Biden calls requiring people to have an ID to vote Jim Crow, and everyone just, oh yes, brave and stunning, Mr. Joe Biden. Thank you so much for standing us for these poor, innocent, ignorant black people who apparently have no ability to get an ID of any kind. IDs, which are, by the way, free to receive
Yes.
and don't cost a damn thing. So all it takes for you to get one is just to go down to your nearest, where do you get it? DMV, I would imagine, right?
Or
Or
courthouse.
or the courthouse or city hall or whatever, and be like, hey, I want an ID. And they're like, all right, here you go for free. Here's your ID. Now you're able to vote. But it's racist to require that.
Right. I just to double check, I went on the Georgia Secretary of State website to check out whether or not the IDs were free, and there are surprisingly, a lot of different ID cards that you can get in the state of Georgia. Everything from like a veteran's ID card to a native Georgian ID card, and tribal affiliation for actual Native American Georgians, and all of these various different identification cards that you can get in Georgia, and most of them have a fee associated with them. I think the highest one that I saw was like $78 for something. However, the state issued ID card for the purposes of voting is free.
Wow. So
Yes.
so what you're telling me is all it takes in order to vote in Georgia is to go down to your nearest county government building and just request a state ID, and they'll give it to you for free. And this is apparently not the equivalent of Jim Crow, worse than Jim Crow.
Yes.
I mean, let's keep in mind, what was Jim Crow, right? Jim Crow was a series of segregationist laws in the South where they made it illegal for white people and black people to exist in the same space as one another. Black people couldn't vote. Black people couldn't serve on juries. Black people couldn't serve as witnesses to a crime, right? Black people couldn't drink at the same drinking fountain at white people, go to the same bathrooms, ride in the same part of the bus, eat at the same restaurants, right? All these things, this horrible legacy of Southern discrimination against black people that went on for a century. That's what Jim Crow was.
Yep.
Right? Apparently, according to Democrats and the mainstream media and a lot of woke corporations out there, all of that which I just described is the moral equivalent of requiring everybody in your state to show an ID that is free to get before they vote.
Not the moral equivalent, the moral inferior.
Right. Like, that's worse. Like, that's worse than Jim Crow. Like, you would rather have Jim Crow back than have to show an ID at the polling place. Like, ID at the voting booth. Huh. No, sir. No, sir. I'd rather not be allowed to vote at all. Apparently, that is the standard by which we are judging these things. I remember the LP of Kentucky.
Yeah, transparent.
Go ahead.
I was just say transparent and secure elections. This is literally fascism.
literally fascism. And oh my God, the reaction we've gotten from the media has been absolutely insane, right? Absolutely out of this world insane. Like they're trying to pretend that this new Georgia law limit is taking away, it's closing down polling places. It's limiting voting hours. It's taking away pre-election voting. It doesn't do any of those things, right? In fact, they have more early voting days than Joe Biden's home state of Delaware. But of course, we're never going to hear about how Delaware is enacting a segregationist Jim Crow, voting law. Now, it's very annoying to see this kind of stuff, and very distressing to see it just spread around unchecked. And not only that, but once this thing really got going, you started to see a bunch of corporations virtue signaling about how anti-racist they are and how much against this voting law that they are. For example, let's talk about Major League Baseball. Now, Major League Baseball was supposed to have their All-Star game and their draft in Atlanta this year. And because of outrage, artificial and unjustified outrage at this new Georgia voting bill, they decided to move their All-Star game from Georgia to Colorado. Colorado, by the way, which is a state that has a voter ID law. So if you want to
than Georgia's.
Exactly. So if you want to explain to me how that makes any sense, please do, because it boggles my mind. I don't understand it.
It's all knee-jerk woke hypocrisy. They didn't think the move through before they initiated it. Nobody checked to see whether or not Colorado had better or worse laws by their standards than Georgia did. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some money and backroom favors exchanging hands for somebody in Denver and somebody on the MLB commissioner board, whoever makes these decisions, to move it there. You always have to dig a little bit deeper and try and figure out who actually is benefiting and how with these sorts of things. It's not always entirely this magnanimous like virtue signal that they're trying to do to make themselves look good in the eyes of screeching blue check Twitter that probably don't even know what type of field baseball's played on, let alone are baseball fans.
I mean, I think the obvious people that this is aimed to benefit are Democrats, because they're the ones freaking out about this whole thing. Now, to me, it doesn't make any sense to be turning this into it's Jim Crow, except to try to force down the perception in people's minds that the Republican Party in Georgia are these neo-segregationist, neo-Jim Crow racists, in order to just cement their support in the state of Georgia. But if that's the goal here, I think they overstep themselves big time with this, right? Because you're starting to see a backlash in Georgia. Even Stacey Abrams, the woman who's been going around claiming to be the governor of Georgia for the last 2 years now, even she was like, "Oh man, I'm really upset that the MLB moved," because there's Listen, right? I am sure there are a lot of people in Georgia who have been propagandized to be very upset about this law. But I bet you that the vast majority of people in Georgia and Atlanta don't give a shit about it. They won't even notice. Like, I have to show an ID at the pool. Oh, well, I'll show an ID because, I'm an adult human being and I have an ID because that's what adults do.
Yep.
Right? But what they will notice is that the All-Star game is no longer coming to their city, right? It's no longer coming to their state. And the reason it's not coming is because of Joe Biden, is because of Stacey Abrams, is because of all these Democrats and the mainstream media who've been making out this really minor change to voting law into this neo-segregationist Jim Crow thing and force the MLB to move to a different city. So if their goal was to simply make people angry at Republicans in order to cement Georgia as a blue state, I think they went way overboard. And all this is going to do is ensure that the state at a state level remains red and that those Senate seats go back to Republicans.
Yeah, and let's also not about what we said at the beginning of the show about how Atlanta is around 51% black, and a lot of the businesses that are in Atlanta are owned by that 51% black population. The MLB All-Star Game is estimated to bring to that area around $100 million worth of economic activity and revenue, which goes to those businesses. Now, the MLB All-Star Game will be played in Denver, which has a rough black population of around 8 or 9%. So if you were virtue signaling for the benefit of black people, pun intended here, swing and a miss.
Yeah, you didn't really do those people a whole lot of good. It would be like the College World Series pulling out of Omaha, right? This is a huge event, brings millions and millions of dollars. People fly in from all over the country to watch it. And the biggest beneficiaries of these sort of events are the small business owners who have businesses in the proximity of the stadium, right? Those are the people who benefit the most from these sort of big sporting events. And those are the people that you're taking money out of their pockets and food off their tables. That those are the people you're punishing because you're mad at Republicans for requiring you to show a free ID before you vote.
Yeah,
and not only it wasn't only them, it was Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines, all these people like, how dare you require a vote? Funny thing about Georgia is they decided to pull Delta's apparently they had like some kind of tax exemption for jet fuel in Georgia, and they're like, whoop, nope, not anymore.
Some type of subsidy, I think it was, but
yeah,
it's Coca-Cola, like the most white bread company. They're always doing like the nostalgia Americana advertisement campaigns and the wholesome Christmas campaigns and everything like that. And then in this last year, they've gone with their full woke left agenda being pushed forward. But the one that really surprises me, and it's like how not self-aware that you can be, is Delta Airlines. Not only because their main hub is in Atlanta, but because you have to show a photo ID before you can use any of their services. Like, how does this skip their mind?
I don't know, dude. I don't understand how they just separate these things in their mind. Like it's racist to require an ID to vote because minorities have a tough time getting IDs, apparently. But it's not racist to show an ID before you get in a Major League Baseball stadium or get on an airplane or drive. You need an ID to drive.
Buy a beer, pack of smokes. There's
buy a gun.
Yeah, buying a gun should be as to vote.
Yeah, it should. You gotta love all these shitty people. Like, oh man, they're making voting harder than it is to get a gun. Like, what? like, say you didn't even require any ID of any kind or background check or waiting period or nothing. Say none of that existed, which it does. But say none of that existed, it's still several $100s to buy a gun. You're telling me what you're talking about how terrible it is to pay like, I don't know, $10, $20 for an ID to vote. You're like, oh, well, that's more difficult than spending several $100s on a gun.
Right.
Like, you really have no fucking clue, do you, if you're having that take?
Right. Our first commenter of the night over here, Scooby Guy 007. That's my buddy Gary. He lives right outside of Atlanta, so we'll wait for him to chime in on how all of this is impacting him and his area over there.
Well, first I want to know how difficult it is, apparently, to get an ID in Atlanta, because apparently, this is like like your grandparents tell you stories about walking uphill 20 miles in the snow.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's what you got to do to vote there. But instead of walking through snow, it's 110-degree weathers, and there's avalanches of peaches running down the street that you got to dodge.
Yeah, what makes matters even worse is Gary there has a Hispanic last name, so it's super duper extra hard for him to get in a bet.
Yeah, I mean, as a fellow Hispanic, I cannot get an ID. It's just impossible. I go down to the ID place. I don't even know what it's called. And like, I need an ID. And like, you're Puerto Rican. You don't get an ID. Get out of here. And they just kick me to the curb. It's such a traumatizing experience every time I try.
Go back to where you came from. It's like, but I came from here.
But I'm from Nebraska. What do you mean? I don't know where to go. This is where I live. Oh, it's so ridiculous. It's so absolutely ridiculous. The hysteria, the nonsense, all this corporate virtue signaling on behalf of Democrats. Also, all because the thought of showing ID to vote is just so out there. And then another thing that people are talking about is apparently like campaign volunteers aren't allowed to hand out food and water within 150 feet of the polling place. They're like, oh, well, this means you want people to starve in line. I'm like, okay, I'll grant you that that's a little silly, but that's not Jim Crow either.
No.
That's just a silly thing. And a lot of other states also have that law, right?
Yeah, it's electioneering.
It's not unique to Georgia. I guess the idea is like, oh, well, we don't want them bribing people in line. And I'm like, I'm wondering how many people would change their vote because someone gave them a hot dog in line. That just seems a little off. But I mean, maybe it's a thing in Georgia. I don't know. You guys from Georgia, tell me, do people hand out hamburgers in line with Joe Biden or Donald Trump stickers on them? And if they don't, they totally should, because that'd be great.
Vermin Supreme's toaster that he has that like burns his face into a piece of bread.
He does that.
Yeah, maybe they'll do that at polling places now.
Hand out cheese sandwiches with Vermin Supreme's face burnt onto the bread. That'd be great. Maybe they should ban this, because Vermin Supreme would get like every single person he handed that to. He'd get all their votes.
Yes, he would.
He's like, well, I was gonna vote for Joe Biden, but then this guy with the boot on his head gave me a sandwich with his face on it. I'm like, gosh darn it, he's getting my vote now. All right, so let's move on to another topic. How was your Easter, by the way? You guys do anything with the family?
You cut out there for a second. What'd you say?
How was your Easter weekend?
Oh, I went up to my sister's place and ate way too much food.
I had a wonderful Easter. Went out with family. We did the whole Easter egg hunt. Had a good ham dinner over at my mom's. It was wonderful. But you know who didn't have a wonderful Easter? Is these people. Now, this is a church in England, and they're trying to have a Good Friday service. And here come the fascist fuzz into their church, telling them what to do. Let's take a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this gathering is unfortunately unlawful under the coronavirus regulations we have currently. You are not allowed to meet inside with this many people under law. At this moment in time, you need to go home. Failure to comply with this direction to leave and go to your home address ultimately could lead you to be fined £200, or if you fail to give your details, to you being arrested. I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, though it is Good Friday, and I appreciate you would like to worship, that this gathering is unlawful. So please may you leave the building now. Thank you.
And they do what he says. Now, okay, this is how you don't deal with cops trying to shut down your church. Now, let me show you how you do deal with the fuzz when they come to shut down your service.
This is so good.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. Out.
Fucking right.
Out. 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 Out of this property. Immediately out. Immediately go out and don't come back. Go, I don't want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to you. Just go.
Out of this property. Immediately out. I don't care what you have to say. Out. Out. Out of this property, you Nazis.
You Nazis.
Out. Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed. Out. Do you understand English?
Out. Go away. Get out.
He's Polish, but I'm getting hints of Arnold in there. That's so good.
That is how you deal with these fucking fascists. That's how it's done. Bravo to that old man. I cannot stop smiling every time I see that video. And this old man pointing at these cops, pointing them to the door, going, out. Get out right now. Get out, Nazis. Get out, this Gestapo. Get out, commies. We don't want you here. You do not have the right to come into this house of worship and tell us we are not allowed to gather to praise our God the way we want. You're going to come in here to the church of an old Polish man who lived under communist occupation, right? Who's from a country that has been occupied for hundreds of years, that was invaded by the Nazis and the communists and split between them. You're going to go into that guy's church and tell him not to worship his God? Get the fuck out.
Oh, I know, man. Like, I think I've heard that in various podcasts and other things that I listen to. I've heard that probably 4 or 5 times, and I cannot help but laugh every time. He just gets so fired up and everything. And I don't know how old that guy is. He's probably old enough to remember Polish communism. He might even be able, if he doesn't personally remember it, I'm sure his parents or grandparents remember Nazi occupation. And, Poland, like you said, it's a country that has been in the middle of some massive power structures or power struggles.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anybody knows what creeping authoritarianism looks like, it's somebody from Poland. And he ain't taken any shit from anybody. And all of those cops, the thing that's a really good juxtaposition between the first video you showed and the second one there is the meekness with which the Canadian cops slinked out. Because I think that maybe it's the proximity to the United States and our kind of shared history that we have being so close to each other. But there's something in those cops' eyes and their demeanor that tells you that they know what they're doing is wrong. They know it, and they're just following orders, and they don't like it, and so they got hurried on out of that door. They tried and they tried and they tried, but that old man was not going to give up. And then you take a look at the one from England. Those guys were up there behind that pulpit telling those worshipers in all of their get up, they were ready to have their Good Friday service. And it sounded like they were Polish too. But
they were.
Those cops got up there and they spoke with authority because in England, the state is the law and what they say goes. And the meekness was on the parishioners in that church, and they quietly and dejectedly got up and walked out the door.
You do not stand up to the police state by meekly giving in to their demands. If the parishioners in that church had said, no, we will not obey your fascist decrees, we will not listen to you, we refuse. We will have our church service if we damn well please. And if you want to stop us, go ahead. Right? Bring all your cops in here. Arrest every single one of us. Drag us out of this church with songs on our lips, praising God the way we are intending to. Right? Do that. Lead us out one by one. We won't stop singing. We won't stop praying. We won't stop having our service. We'll continue it in jail if that's what you want. Make them do that.
Yep.
And I guarantee you, you'll get the same reaction as that guy in Canada got from those cops. That look of shame on their faces as they slink out and walk away.
Yeah.
That's the response you get. That's how you deal with cops that want to shut you down. And look, I know I'm coming from a place where I don't have a business. I don't run a church. No cop's going to come into this podcast room and tell me to shut things down. Right.
Yeah.
But if you really want to have your church services, your businesses, right, your sporting events, if you want these things back, you have to take them back. They're not going to give it to you. Right. You have to take this stuff back. The lockdowns, the restrictions, all this stuff ends the second you decide to end it.
Yep. And judging by the kind of the regalia that they were wearing in the English church video, I'm going to, and the fact that they're Polish, that they were Catholics. Now, if I were in their shoes, I would expect no legal or financial help from Rome if they did decide to stand up to it. However, the the archdiocese or whatever of the regional church, I'm willing to bet that if enough priests and bishops and cardinals in that regional area got together and decided that the boot of the state on our necks during our holiest of days has become too much to bear and we need to stand up. The Catholic Church is probably one of, if not the wealthiest entities on planet Earth. And they said that you could be fined £200 for continuing to worship. That's chump change compared to the resources available to a Catholic archdiocese. Like I said, I don't think that they should expect any assistance from the communist pope that they have in Rome right now. But regionally, if they decided that they were going to fight back with some civil disobedience, some sit-ins, some ass-ins, I guess you would call it, or whatever, on Sunday morning and on holidays, it'd be no problem to pay the £200 fine of everybody in that room and have plenty.
You know what these churches need is some winged hussars to ride in and kick these police out. Man, I love going through our comments because there's a lot of people in our comment section that know history, and they're talking about, you know, the Poles saving Vienna from the Ottoman Turks and the division of Poland, you know, back in the 1800s, and then again during World War II. Poland is a fascinating country with a fascinating history, you know, and it warms my heart to see this Polish Canadian man stand up like a winged hussar of old and drive the Ottoman police out of his church. Brings a smile to my face. Now, I got another video that I want to show you guys, and this one kind of just gives away the whole thing about what these COVID passports are all about. So let's take a listen to this. This is a video that aired on CNN. Let's have a listen.
And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing. I mean, you were mentioning, Chris, about how all these states are reopening. They're reopening at 100%. And we have a very narrow window to tie reopening policy to vaccination status. Because otherwise, if everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things. Here are all these freedoms that you have. Because otherwise, people are going to go out and enjoy these freedoms anyway.
Oh boy, they just said the quiet part out loud, didn't they?
Yes.
Like, hey guys, we took away all your freedoms, but if you're just good little boys and girls and do what we say and give in to our demands, you can have some of that freedom back. Aren't we benevolent gods? All I require you to do is kneel. Why can't you just do that for me?
See, if you got that from that clip, I'm kind of surprised, because what I got from that clip was panic. She's sitting there saying that states like Texas and Florida that are opened back up 100%, states like us here in Nebraska that never shut down except for maybe a few little like local regulations here and there that have largely expired. She's panicked because people can look at what's going on in these states and compare it to what's going on in their states and say, hey, these lockdowns, these mask mandates, these mass vaccinations, these COVID passports, they're not entirely necessary. So if people can take a look at, say, Texas, which dropped their mask mandate 3 weeks ago and is seeing record low numbers in both cases and deaths, shock of shocks, then how are we going to get people to buy into this COVID passport and the vaccines? No, we can't allow this. Shut it down. They know. Shut it down.
They don't want this pandemic to end, right? Or at the very least, they want something out of it ending. Like, they will let this thing go when it benefits them the most. Like, they want to sell you back your freedoms. They want to sell you back your liberties. Do this, do that, and you can see your family again. Do this, and you can go to a baseball game again. Right? Do this, and you can go to a concert or drink at a bar or hang out with your friends. But like you said, you're right, Hobbs. Most of us have been doing that for months.
Yep.
Right? I had this interaction with this guy on Twitter, and he was like, man, I really hope that they have these COVID passports. I haven't been staying inside my house for a year just to get infected by some unvaccinated person. Like, you've been inside for a year? Really? That's you. You're that guy. You're that guy that's been inside your home for an entire year, lecturing everybody through your computer. Meanwhile, all the rest of us are just out and about living our lives without a care in the world, because we're not afraid of a virus with that's 0.2% deadly, right? Yep. If you're young and healthy, the chances of you dying of this thing are practically nothing.
Right.
And if you have the vaccine, right, you know what, it's supposed to be 90% successful. So your 0.2% chance of dying just went down by 90%. So what are you so scared of?
Yep, that's I saw a friend of mine post a meme, and I'm kind of disappointed in her. I know she's not watching right now, but it posted a picture, black and white photo of iron lungs from the polio epidemic way back when, and it's like iron lungs during the polio epidemic. How little memory we have, or something like that. And I'm sitting there thinking, if polio had a 99.7% survival rate and a 99.1% complete recovery rate, I think I'd take my chances with the polio. The coof is not as big a deal as they're making it out to be. And for that guy that says, they stayed inside for a year, he hopes the COVID passports come out because he doesn't want to get infected by an unvaccinated person. Dude, that's not how vaccines work. First of all, the vaccine is supposed to keep you from being infected, not from infecting other people. So if this guy's all hot and bothered about the vaccine, you can rest assured he's got the vaccine, or he's, probably in line to get the vaccine. And if you got so much trust in everything that you've been told as far as this entire pandemic is gone, then you should be good to go. A COVID positive person can cough in your face and you're probably going to be A-okay. With or without the vaccine. But that's neither here nor there.
You're going to get us kicked off YouTube, dude.
Well, whatever.
I already got kicked off Facebook. I can't lose YouTube too.
Fuck them, we'll go to Rumble.
Yeah, let's do it. Mines. All right, everybody, we're going to Mines.
Yeah.
I think we still have like 100 followers on our Mines account that we haven't used in a year.
Yeah.
Oh well. Well, I mean, this is the thing. They want to get something out of this whole thing. And like people that have been locked inside their houses for an entire year, they want to think it was all for something, right? Like they've been suffering. Like I can't imagine what it must be like to lock yourself into your house last March and still be there, just rotting away. Well, man, how awful a life must that have been? Yeah. How terrible must that be? Can you imagine doing that? Meanwhile, us assholes haven't been doing that.
Right.
We're just out and about doing whatever we want. Like I went over to my family's house I went over to my wife's family's on Sunday, and then in the afternoon I went over to my family's house, right? And I went to church that Saturday with an entire auditorium of unmasked people sitting right next to each other. How dare I? I know I just spread the co-flu everywhere. I'm just spraying the virus everywhere as we go. And how dare I do that? Meanwhile, this poor sucker's in his house and he's been there since last March. And please, oh please, I just want to go outside and not be infected by one of these unvaxxed morons. Like, dude, seriously, grow the fuck up. Yeah. Like, if you're not only are you so afraid of COVID that you haven't left your house in a year, but you're so afraid of someone who might not be vaccinated. So your 0.2% chance of dying goes down 90% because you got the vaccine, but you're still afraid of that minuscule, tiny little possibility. You're so afraid of that you want to implement a COVID passport. Dude, you might as well just stay inside your house for the rest of your life because life is too dangerous for you. Yep. I mean, that amount of risk that you're unwilling to tolerate is so minute that you're just a basket case at this point. I'm sorry, man. You're just a basket case coward. Just shut your blinds, lock your doors, and never leave your house.
Yep. So, when people start saying shit like, oh, I got vaccinated, it's so good to finally be able to start living normally again. I'm just like, yeah, you could have done that at any time.
Yeah, like I've been doing that this whole time.
I've been doing it this whole time.
It never gets old for me, at least, getting on Twitter and reminding these people that life has gone on for most of us uninterrupted. Like, dude, we live in Nebraska. There are no mandates here. Like, the closest thing we got to any kind of mandate, right? Any sort of real mandate was they limited capacity in restaurants. I mean, I think they closed restaurants here for like a couple weeks, right? Like way, way back last March, right? And within a month, they were open again. Yeah, sure, they had limited capacity, but that's gone now too. That's been gone forever. Omaha hasn't had a mask mandate in months. I don't think Lincoln has their mask mandate anymore.
They still do.
Oh, Lincoln still does? I wonder what the compliance is like there. Because I remember going down to see Spike Cohen and his campaign stuff. Nobody bothered us, and we weren't wearing masks.
Yeah, I know. I was in the grocery store a couple of days ago, and I walked up behind this guy, and he turns around, he's wearing a mask, and he sees me without one. And he reaches up and goes, "Oh, fuck this. I forgot I'm not in Lincoln anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're a little up here, buddy." Yeah.
I mean, I'm not telling you that COVID doesn't kill people. It does. But I'm not going to put my entire life on hold for an entire year just on that slim chance. It's not going to happen. And you know what? This whole COVID thing not only just leads people to lose their minds, but it also leads to some very ridiculous policies being implemented in very ridiculous ways. And I'm talking about this video from a Delta airline where a 2-year-old was eating yogurt without a mask on, and the flight attendant decided it was a good idea to kick the family off the flight. So let's take a look at that.
I told you, non-compliance, we'll have to get off. I didn't want to do this. You have to pick up your stuff.
What did we do?
I'm sorry. I want you off.
Okay, no problem. Just tell me what we did.
Non-compliance with the mask.
We're wearing a mask. Wearing a mask.
She's not wearing it. The baby?
Wearing a mask.
I want a baby. We keep putting it on.
Wearing a mask.
A lot of kids don't wear a mask.
Who's been sitting next to me? Was I wearing a mask?
He was wearing it the whole time.
Guys, was I wearing a mask all the time, everybody?
I'm sorry. But the kids don't. This baby's
I'll make sure he wears it. Everything's gonna be fine.
I'm sorry.
I'll make sure that they're wearing it, okay?
He's pulling it off.
We don't have to watch the whole thing, but the long and short is they decided to kick this. They took everybody off the plane and called the police on this family because their 2-year-old wouldn't get the mask on while she ate yogurt. Like, how ridiculous must you be to think that this is a sane and rational policy, that a baby, a toddler, cannot eat because of a mask mandate?
Right. Best part of this whole video to me was just the fact that the kid's just sitting there while all this is going on, just like, fuck y'all, I'm eating yogurt. Just can spoon it into her mouth while everybody's arguing.
Like, what are all these adults yelling about? It doesn't make any sense. It must not have anything to do with me. I'm just eating yogurt, a perfectly normal thing for a 2-year-old to do.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. She's just like, man, this yogurt's good. I don't know what y'all are complaining about.
I mean, how ridiculous is that? Like, oh, you're in non-compliance with the mask policy. Your 2-year-old isn't wearing a mask. Like, wow, what a bitch. Like, imagine being the kind of person to look at a toddler and be like, oh, no mask on the toddler. Oh, no, we're all in danger.
Yeah, from what I understand, it wasn't even the flight attendant's, wasn't really her call or anything. Like, she didn't want to do it. It was because one of the other passengers complained to her. Like, that child is not wearing a mask. It's putting us all at risk. And the flight attendant didn't want to do it. The captain thought it was overboard. Almost everybody else on the flight thought it was ridiculous. But because one fucking Karen decided that she was going to have her Karen moment, the whole flight got held up and everybody got taken off, and this family got the cops called on them. And then that flight attendant got removed from that flight. And I don't know if flight attendants get like paid per flight or whatever it is that their pay structure works, but I assume that it can't be good.
I mean, but still, like, a passenger complains about a 2-year-old not wearing a mask. The proper thing to do in that situation is to say, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to make that 2-year-old wear a mask. Like, be nice about it. Be like, oh, yes, I'll take care of it. I'll talk to them. Bitch. As you walk away. Like, come on now. Seriously. Yeah. It's a 2-year-old. Just turned 2, apparently. It was like 2 years and 2 months. Right? And just sitting there eating yogurt and apparently needs to be taken off the plane for whatever reason. Okay, do you want to talk about this this Clarence Thomas thing?
Not really, because I don't really have a whole lot of information other than that one tweet. So I don't really want to weigh in on it.
Yeah, it's really a deal. Because this debate over big tech censorship and what the government's solution to the problem has been going on for a very long time. I think me and you have very different takes about it. But I was in a debate with somebody on Twitter today, going back and forth. And it's funny because libertarians very often get accused of being utopian thinkers. Like, we live in a fantasy world of utopia that's just doesn't conform with reality. And it's kind of funny because my whole take on this was a very realpolitik argument, and his take on it was very utopian from my point of view. Because here's the deal that I have with getting government involved in regulating social media, right? is what you're really doing is putting that power in the hands of the people that are most likely to want to censor you.
Yeah.
Because that's just consider what might have happened. It's 2016. Republicans just took the White House. They have the House, they have the Senate, and they passed some kind of government oversight committee to oversee social media, right? And they're doing it to protect themselves from being censored. So I don't know whether it's a congressional committee or a department from the executive branch, right? One of those two things, because it has to be an ongoing effort. Can't just be a one-off thing, right? So say you did all that in 2016, and now it's 2021, and Joe Biden's the president, Nancy Pelosi's running the House, and Chuck Schumer's running the Senate. What do you think they do with that power? Do you think things are better or worse right now with Democrats in charge of all that? Because they say it's a department, right? It's a department. Who selects the department head? Joe Biden. Say it's a congressional committee. Who staffs the congressional committees? Nancy Pelosi. Right? You think things are bad now. And I agree. I'm not saying there's not a problem. Right? We've been talking about this issue for a very long time and not saying that there is no problem. I'm saying that if you put more power in the hands of the federal government, you're not solving the problem. You're handing them the noose that they'll use to hang you with.
Yep. Yeah.
And any solution that you may get in there will at best be temporary, because I guarantee you, even if Republicans manage to wrestle control of the federal government back sometime in the future, things are cyclical, right? The Democrats are going to take it right back. And then, once government has powers, they don't relinquish it.
Yep.
Right? It's like the Department of Education is a relatively new thing. The Republicans used to run on getting rid of it. Now it's a permanent fixture in American life, and it's never being gotten rid of ever. Like if you create a Department of Social Media today, in 20 years, in 10 years, Republicans are going to be running to get rid of it. And in 20 years, no one's even going to be thinking about it anymore. Government censorship of social media is going to be a well-entrenched factor in American life at that point.
Right, and the tweet that we're referring to, if anybody is question, is a tweet by Jack Posobiec, I think, who said that Clarence Thomas has, I don't know, why it's Clarence Thomas and not the Supreme Court. Maybe this is just an opinion he voiced out loud or something. But Clarence Thomas says that big tech, although they are a private entity, do not have First Amendment protections to censor protected speech, and therefore Section 230 is unconstitutional. Now I'm not going to pretend that I'm more of a constitutional scholar than Clarence Thomas by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, flat out getting rid of Section 230 opens the door for even more big tech censorship, because with the liability immunities that are written into Section 230 stripped away, that makes the platform, Facebook or YouTube or whatever, legally liable for anything on their platform. So as it stands right now, they are legally protected from, say, violence. Some guy says, go burn down XYZ. Well, under Section 230, that guy gets in trouble. Facebook or who, you strip Section 230 away, then these big tech companies will be on the prowl looking with a magnifying glass or microscope for anything that could be construed by anybody to be unprotected speech. And they will be working harder than ever to censor it, because they don't want to be held liable for any stupid shit any of us say on their platforms. Now,
we say a lot of stupid shit.
Yes, we do. We do say a lot of stupid shit. The internet is an ocean of piss. But
and we love swimming in it.
Gurgle, gurgle. But I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, the free market isn't working well or fast enough. I mean, eventually I would think that it would course correct, but how many years?
Follow
how
us on
many-
MeWe. Bring down Facebook.
Yeah, how long is that going to take? And with
To get to reach the 12,000 likes we have on Facebook, we have 160 on MeWe right now. It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, well, not even just for us, but I mean, like, how long would it take for pure market solutions to manifest themselves? It would be so far that the rest of the infrastructure that surrounds us, things like payment processors and banks and investment groups and everything else that is so tied together right now, are so infested with the woke. We are in a point right now where a monolithic authority entity like a government is kind of the only way to get out of this. But at the same time, that opens the door for a different kind of authoritarian censorship and oversight. So I don't know what the solution is. Maybe it's like an independent third party auditor of these platforms, kind of in the way that Underwriters Laboratory checks the safety of electrical appliances. UL, you'll see those little symbols on every single electronic appliance. UL is a private testing entity that when you take a look at an appliance that has the Underwriters Laboratory seal of approval, you are almost guaranteed to have a safe appliance on your hands right there. And it's not insured by the government. It is a private institution that puts their own reputation on the line to do these sorts of things. So perhaps an Underwriters Laboratory of social media auditing to make sure that they're in compliance with the stipulations of Section 230 to be a platform and not a publisher is what we need. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
See, I don't know the solution to these problems either. I'm just a dumb trash man from Nebraska. But I will tell you this. If there is no non-government solution, then there is no solution, because putting government in charge of the solution is a recipe for suicide. It's not a solution. It's a poisoned pill.
Yep.
Right? And that's all it's going to be. Well, anyway, let's end with this right here. This is a pretty funny picture that you showed me. Apparently, this is from a comic book that Captain America. What's his face that's writing this thing?
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes, and it's a picture for those of you listening to the podcast. It's a picture of Red Skull's blog, because Red Skull is a blogger now. Because every bad guy has to be a blogger these days for some god awful reason. And on the screen, they got some captions. Caption number 1 is 10 rules for life, and then caption number 2 is chaos and order. Now, you want to tell me what those remind you of when you see them?
Well, it doesn't remind me of anything particularly, but it does remind a certain guy named Jordan Peterson of himself, because apparently Ta-Nehisi Coates has decided to model the Red Skull's behavior in the newest issue of Captain America on Jordan Peterson. Now, Jordan Peterson wrote a book called 10 Rules for Life, and the subtitle was The Antidote for Chaos. And if you take a look at the picture, it's Red Skull's 10 Rules for Life and Chaos and Order. And then there's Carl Luger's Genius. Carl Luger is the Red Skull, I believe. And then down in the bottom right is The Feminist Trap, which is another thing that Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, is the cancer of...
Yeah, I'm just going to say out here, Jordan Peterson is based as fuck. And I mean, if Ta-Nehisi Coates sees it as necessary to go after him in this very passive-aggressive manner, then all the more power to you, Mr. Peterson. It was funny seeing people on Twitter react to this, because Jordan Peterson is like, what the fuck is this? And people were like, oh, are you seeing yourself in the Red Skull? It's like, dude, this is an obvious reference to Jordan Peterson. It's blatant and in your face. right? And you pretending that it's not to try to score some argumentation points is pathetic and stupid. And we can see right through you. You're not smart. You're not slick. You're an idiot. Sit down. Adults are talking.
Right, yeah, and Plains Prepper here says it's 12 rules for life. Yeah, that's the Jordan Peterson's book is 12 rules for life. Red Skulls is 10 rules for life. You changed it just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
We're gonna throw those alt-right Nazis off the trail so they don't see what we're doing here, but we see you.
See, 10 rules for life was the first draft, and
Yeah.
he's like, thought of 2 more rules.
Pet a
Do it.
lobster whenever you see one.
Make your bed, wash your junk.
Those
are the last 2 rules, the most important rules in life.
There you go.
All right, you're never going to be the man that you're meant to be if you don't if you don't make your bed and don't wash your junk. All right, I think that's all for us tonight. We've been going for solid hours. Any other topics you want to talk about before we called it a night?
Nothing that'll last more than nothing that'll last less than 30 seconds. So let's just call her a night and rack out.
Oh, I did want to talk about this DeSantis Publix thing going down in Florida, where 60 Minutes ran a fucking hit piece against the governor of Florida for allowing Publix grocery chains to, give out the vaccine. How dare he? Very bad of him.
And it turns out that the 60 Minutes hit piece is a 100% fabrication. So
exactly. And I feel kind of personally attacked because my first ever job was at a bagger at a Publix, and it's a wonderful place to work. It's a great place, and if you ever go to Florida, it's the best grocery chain in the whole country. It's honestly that amazing, and it doesn't surprise me that they're one of the first pharmacies, handing out vaccines because they have everything there. Like I'm pretty sure that their key lime pie would solve COVID all by itself, without the need for any vaccine. So get a scientist on that. I'm sure that they'll tell you that I'm right.
Trust
all right, that's it. That's it for us, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. You've been a lovely audience. Tune in again next Tuesday for another episode of Token and Hobbs. Good night, everybody.